And welcome to Juck on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me for a Juck Guys recruiting chat, as we have had a new offer that we're going to talk about. James Laurinaitis on his horse for a third linebacker in the class. And we've also got some tidbits, some old faces, some old names coming back into the news. Nothing of consequence, but some interesting stories nonetheless. So let's go over that, and we will start with DRE Gray. DRE Gray out of Virginia, total stud. A kid who came to Ohio State's camp in the summer and blew his recruitment up two summers ago when he stonewalled the number one defensive tackle, Jakeem Stewart, like 5 times in a row, and he's half his size. And he is, in my opinion, in this class of 2026, one of the top 10 players, regardless of position. He's awesome. Unfortunately, he plays a position that's on your football team. The difference between a really good offensive guard and a great offensive guard doesn't really affect the scoreboard as much as some other positions, but it does show up on the salary. And he's obviously a 5-star who Ohio State was not going to go all in on, and he ends up committing to South Carolina. You got to develop great guards. You got to develop them, not pay for them. You look at Max Riley, who is a really, really good guard prospect, top 100 type. DRE Gray, a great one. Huge difference in financial commitment. So you got to be able to identify and develop, at bare minimum, really good guards if you're an offensive line coach worth your salt, especially in a salary cap era. So South Carolina fires their offensive line coach, and there is some talk that Shane Beamer may go to Virginia Tech, which I think is total nonsense. Obviously, his dad coached there. I've heard him talk about that situation, and it seems pretty clear that he does not want to be Beamer's son, right? He doesn't want to be Beamer's kid. He wants to be his own guy. And the way he said it made me feel like, yeah, that guy's never coaching at Virginia Tech. He doesn't want to be that. He wants to be his own man, and he's done great at South Carolina. They're having a rough year, but all in all, he's done a fantastic job. So I don't think he's going anywhere. But DRE Gray, when the offensive line coach was fired, he made some public statements. It makes things a little interesting or something to that effect. So Tyler Bowen doesn't miss the opportunity, goes down and visits him. Will it come of anything? No, it's not going to come of anything. But he did go visit him. He obviously tried to visit and did visit and tried to flip Adam Guthrie out of Miami Trace. Adam Guthrie, and this was never going to happen. I've been saying this all along. There were a lot of people trying to push that this was a real thing. This was not a real thing. I've got sources very close to that one. And he has come out now, Guthrie, and said North Carolina, well, he didn't personally, but sources told On3, North Carolina tried to entice him with bigger money, and Ohio State and Tyler Bowen have been leading the charge trying to flip him, but it was a bit too late. And Guthrie then goes on to tell rivals he is staying loyal to the Tigers because the culture is built and the coaches are great. And just because they have one hiccup one season doesn't determine what is to come, as our 2026 class is one of the best in the country for a reason. We are loyal, and we want to win a national championship again for Clemson. Guthrie, part of the 2026 recruiting class at Clemson that is ranked 15th in the country. And there are 6 offensive linemen in that class. In the last 3 years, Clemson 7-4, 8-4, 2-4 against Power 4 teams. That is 17-12 total in the last 3 years. 13-8 in the ACC. That is horrific. And we can all see where this is going with Dabo. Like, Dabo went from dressing down Clemson supporters after the first 2 losses to LSU and Georgia Tech. We remember that press conference. I played it here. He was so arrogant. And why do we got to look different standards here? I mean, and then he goes on to lose 2 more games. They're 3-4. And this is a guy who has been passed up. He's been passed up. The only way to fix this is he needs to admit that how he does it doesn't work anymore. and he will never admit it because he thinks he is special and he is the engine that powers Clemson and made it special. They need to go about things the way the rest of the country does, or they will not improve their roster like everybody else does. And year over year, it'll just continue to get worse. But he's not going to do it. And anybody going to that school right now just is really out of touch with college football if they think they're going to a contender. That's just not happening. They're not going to a contender. They're going to play for a good ACC team most years. Not this year. Not this year. It's not. So, but yeah, man, that kid is hook, line, and sinker, bought in all the way on Clemson, and that's where it was going to stay all along. So the quest continues for another offensive lineman, whether that be, a bigger effort for Champ Smith, etc. Either way, I love the class as it is right now, whether they get somebody else in or not. Brian Hartline was at Harper Woods up in Michigan, checking out Dakota Garant, who he has now established a great relationship with. Dakota Garant, one of the best wide receivers in the country, and it is really between Ohio State and Michigan for him right now as it stands. And this is a 2027 kid, obviously, we're talking about here. Let me pull up his player card for you. Dakota is Rivals' number 7 wide receiver. That's his industry ranking. Top 50 player overall. Rivals Internal has him as the number 5 wide receiver. And he is 6'1", 190, a stud. And Hart also went there because there's another wide receiver who is very highly rated that he's offered in the next class at the same high school. And wouldn't that be cool to snag 2 out of the same high school? Where is his player card? DeAndre Bidden. So DeAndre Bidden at 5'11". This is a smaller kid. He's younger, though. Obviously, he's going to be a little bit smaller. But he's a really great wide receiver as well. So 2 for the price of 1 maybe at Harper Hills, which would be really cool. Keenan Bailey in the tight end situation is interesting. So Keenan goes after a 3-star from Jacksonville, Florida, when there are 2 4-star tight ends in the state of Ohio who end up committing to Notre Dame and Georgia, right? You got Georgia and Notre Dame coming up in the state of Ohio. Keenan never even offered them. That's how much he believed in this 3-star Corbin Fordham out of Florida. So Corbin Fordham leaves the class. And now what's Keenan going to do? Obviously, he's tried really hard to flip MACK Sutter from Alabama. Never going to happen. I don't know why people keep pushing this. Alabama paid him a ton of money. And unless Ohio State matches that, which they are not going to for a tight end, it's just not going to happen. So what's he going to do? I think there's a decent chance he doesn't do anything here. I obviously, you've got a couple prospects in the state of Ohio in Nick Latour from Lebanon, who is my favorite, outside of Preston Frizzell, who's committed to Notre Dame, but he's not coming off that Notre Dame commitment. That's a Toledo Central Catholic kid. Deshaun Kaiser. It's basically, they've got a great relationship at the school. And by the way, their uniforms are incredibly interesting. They've always been a hybrid of Ohio State and Notre Dame uniforms. If you've never seen them through the years, it's pretty crazy to see that Ohio State uniform with a shamrock on it. You know what I mean? But I don't think anything's coming of the Preston Frizzell situation. So you got Nick Latour, PJ McFarland out of Lakota West, who's committed to Indiana. And I would like to see Nick Latour get the offer. That's what I would like to see. Nick Latour out of Lebanon, 6'5", 240, shows a lot of potential. And I think that Keenan, who just visited him at his school the other day, I think Keenan would, if he couldn't get Preston Frizzell to flip, would potentially bring in Latour, or he may pass. He may pass on taking a tight end here because he does have a lot of numbers. Auburn commit Brilen Wac. Brilen Wac, everybody remembers Brilen, top safety in the country, who the Buckeyes were in on for a long time, who eventually decided to commit to Auburn. because why not Auburn, right? Which remains the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in recruiting. What a pitch, man. Why not? Why not? I can think of a lot of reasons. Your head coach was on the hot seat entering the season, and he is 0-4 in the SEC this year. Now, Womack, not taking that very good. He has spoken out about this team a couple of times, the team on the field, referring to them as we, though he's not part of the team yet. Here's what he had to say first. You've got to score 20 or more points to compete, and we've done that 0 times in SEC play. It doesn't look like it's going to change. Nothing's changing. So that's what Womack had to say, which got a lot of people excited. Maybe Womack is going to decommit. Well, Hugh Freeze is going to get fired. This dude is literally out there the other day saying, when asked about the athletic director, so at Florida State, the athletic director came out and supported Mike Norvell and basically said, we'll review this at the end of the year. Now, Norvell is going to get fired at the end of the year. But Hugh Freeze was asked about the athletic director at Auburn, what his support would mean. And man, he came out and, oh yeah, it would mean a great deal to all of us if the athletic director came out and, gave his support to us. He's saying this to the media about the athletic director whose office is down the hallway. Yeah, it would mean a great deal if he would come out and say that and support us because, we think we're the ones who are going to turn it around and we can get it turned around. They're 0-4 in the SEC. It's going nowhere. He keeps talking about how he's raised the talent level, and he has. It's not showing up on the field at all. Womack comes out and wants to clarify and puts another statement out about what he originally said. And he says in his updated statement that he released, in regard to the article that's circulating, I want to clear the air. My intentions were never to badmouth Auburn's offense. I'm just a competitor who's passionate about the game and excited about what's being built here. Dude, Auburn has so much potential, and I can't wait to be a part of it. I just don't want anything to be taken out of context from what I said about recent games. I will continue to support my team, win, lose, or draw, but I will also continue to hold us to the highest standard, War Eagle. I love a kid with a mentality like that, right? I mean, that's awesome. The problem is he chose a loser. He chose a loser in Hugh Freeze. He chose a loser in this Auburn regime, and they're going to be fired. It's pretty clear. If it's not this year, it'll be next year because he's not turning it around. He's not. And whatever, man, that's the bet he wanted to jump in. Similar thing to the Guthrie situation. And I know, like, as Ohio State fans, sometimes we get really snobbish about this. Like, why would you choose that school over Ohio State? And I get it. It's fair in some instances, I think, when you look at schools like Auburn, where you got a coach literally on the hot seat, like, then it's like, yeah, why would you do that? You've got stability at so many places. Why would you choose a place that's on shaky ground? And this is what you choose to walk into? It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me when you can go anywhere in the country. You choose to go to a place that it doesn't have a regime in charge. It's on stable footing. So anyway, moving on to linebackers, James Laurinaitis has offered another linebacker, and this one certainly going to irritate some people as we look at the class right now. The 9th rated class in the country that has 12 blue chippers, so 12 4 and 5 stars, and now 8 3 stars. And that is like so different than what it has been, right? They were pulling 87% blue chip ratios and classes with 2 3 stars. Now you're up to 12 and 8, and things are different. Things are very different, and it is important to point out Ohio State not the only one at the top of the board recruiting like that. Texas has 7 3 stars. They're the 5th rated class. Georgia has like 7 or 8. They're the number 2 rated class. USC's up there. They've got a ton of 3 stars as well, more than Ohio State. And this is just becoming more the norm. And when you look at, let's say, for instance, this last cycle in 2025, James Laurinaitis brings in his 2 studs in TJ Alford and Riley Pettijohn. So you got 2 studs there who are guaranteed studs. Now, you could go and get another stud. You could go get 3 studs. What eventually happens is those 3 battle it out, and the one that's left out transfers. He brought in with them a true throwback Mike, developmental guy in Eli Lee, my dude, Juck'I, who is going to be successful at Ohio State because he will not fail. And he will not transfer because he's a true Buckeye. And that is the difference. Now you've got a guy in your program who's going to be part of your program, knows he's on a developmental track, knows he's not going to be competing for playing time his second year, most likely, and he's okay with that. In 2026, you got your 2 studs, Sincere Johnson, CJ Sana. Some don't view CJ Sana as a stud. I promise you he is. He's faster in short spaces than Sincere Johnson. By the way, man, some people are so off on Sincere. I've seen this floating around the internet, calling him Baby Arvell. Very, very, very different games. Totally different players, to be honest. Sincere Johnson compares more to Cody Simon than he does to Arvell Reese as far as style of play and what you're going to get out of him. Anyway, they see the Glenville, they put that together. It's not very, very different. But who's the third guy in this class with Sana? And Sincere, actually, Sana probably plays more like Arvell Reese than Sincere. Who's the third guy? Now, you could go and get yourself a 4-star that's going to come in and want to be on the field faster and is going to compete with CJ Sana and Sincere for one of those top 2 spots. And then again, the loser leaves. So I've been saying for a year, the best way to go about this is to bring in that developmental guy. Quit looking at the blue chip ratio. It's a nonsense stat at this point because it is intentional now that I'm going to go take, instead of that 3rd 4-star linebacker, I'm going to go get myself a guy who either has great measurables, who has potential, or I'm going to go get a guy who's maybe doesn't have great measurables, but he's just an amazing stat stuffer, just a crazy football player that some people would overlook. One of the two. You're either going to be a great football player who's a little undersized, or you're going to be a guy with great measurables who might turn into a great football player. One of those two. And I think that's the best way to go. Get that third guy who knows he's on the long track, who isn't going anywhere. Hopefully that guy can be from Ohio. Doesn't really matter. If not, it's just got to be a guy that's got something unique about him. And if he ends up developing into a potential contributor or surpassing one of the other 2 guys, now you got 3 options. If you go with the 3 4-stars, you're guaranteed to only have 2 because one is for sure leaving. Gabe Powers, for instance. Now, believe it or not, I think that when you're working with a salary cap, this is definitely the best way to go. And I do understand that at linebacker, it now looks like to people that James has been, kind of dropping down the board. Jaden Williams seems to be steadfast on Indiana. He's not committing. We saw the kid from Nice High School committed to Oklahoma, whatever. Didn't want him anyway. But the particular prospect that he is offered has got the intangibles of the great measurements. We're talking 6'5", 200-pound Braxton Rembert out of Caleb Downs High School in Georgia. He is a 3-star, the number 117th linebacker in the country. Looking at this kid, he's put up a lot of stats, high-level Georgia football, and I want to say like 15 tackles for loss. He's got like 8 sacks, 46 tackles on the year. And the size is certainly enticing. And when you look at him play, I think that the speed is good. Laterally, it looks a little goofy. It looks a little long, a little goofy playing linebacker. He's played some edge as well, though. So, there's definitely potential here. And like I said, Jaden Williams, he's not coming. What do you do at this point? You might as well take a swing on somebody, right? So if you're going to take a swing on somebody, let's take it on a 6'5", 200-pound kid and see what happens. Put him in the system for a couple years. Maybe you strike gold. And if you do, then you look like a genius, which I love. We know James Laurinaitis can coach him up. That's for sure. So I'm for it. Let's go get him. I know some people are going to be salty about that. There are some people who are really lamenting the fact that there are so many 3-stars in this class, and I get it. But I think even if a lot of the talk is about the money, we're not spending any money to get the big dogs. I think even if you were seeing Ohio State spend the money this year at the top of the board, in the middle of the board, we would still see a larger percentage of 3-stars added at the back end of the class. Because keep in mind, we've got more scholarships to use now to take more flyers. And those guys can make a core of your program that stick around. Also keep in mind, the bottom 10 guys in the class, we have been averaging in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, just 2 guys ending up being contributors, right? 2023, it looks like there's going to be more, like double, triple, maybe even. But those first 3, just 2 guys out of that bottom 10 end up being contributors in this transfer portal era. And by contributor, I mean like they're still here at the end of their career. And that is something, right? So a lot of these guys in this bottom 10, a lot of these 3-stars statistically are not going to be around anyway. So you're taking shots. What's it matter if it's a 4-star or a 3-star? It doesn't, right? You're taking shots. At defensive end, DRE QUINN, the former Clemson commit, is pretty much, man, it's all him or bust. And he'll be in next month. People keep talking about this Luke Wafle thing, which drives me nuts, man. It is ridiculous. It was a total waste of time for Larry to spend some time there last month at his game when he could have been out scouting somebody else. Luke Wafle, unless Ohio State is prepared to pay way more than they were comfortable with last time when they lost him to USC because USC came in with an absurd offer and USC is cooking and they need defensive help to fix them. None of these defensive guys are committing or are flipping off that commitment. None of them. Why aren't we going out and finding someone like James is out there finding? Why aren't we going out and finding that prospect? We're not. We're not at all. It's either him or DRE QUINN. That's it. That's all that's on the board. And you got Kari Wilder committed, who's awesome, but Kari's more of a hybrid. You're going to want to play Kari everywhere. I just don't get it. I don't get it for the life of me, man. People excited Billy Napier got fired, talking about KJ Ford, who I don't think the Buckeyes are interested in at all anymore. And I'm not either. I don't think that I didn't like him as a prospect in the first place. Like he was kind of like, all right, okay, I guess kind of guy for me. He's way undersized. He's got a bad attitude. He had a bad attitude before film came out from him punching a guy in the handshake line last month. He's not a guy that fits at Ohio State at all. So I think Ohio State is not going after him anyway. But when we look at next year, if Kenyatta goes, Zion Grady, in my opinion, is your number 1 guy. And I think that that's a solid number 1. I think Kari Wilder walks in as your number 2. And while Kari, I love, as you know, I think that only happens if you are, not looking great. And Bo Atkinson would be your number 3. That's not a high-level Ohio State starter. This is a solid guy, solid rotational guy, not a high-level Ohio State starter. Epi Satanile, I think, is a hit. I think it probably will be another year before he develops into that. You got Dom Kirks, who the jury is still out on. CJ Hicks, nobody knows what that's going to look like in another year. Maybe good enough to be a high-level Ohio State starter. It certainly wasn't this year. Josh Mickens, who is probably going to hit the portal, I would imagine, at the end of this year. Logan George, I don't think that's a guy who's ever going to be anywhere near an Ohio State starter level, maybe a rotational guy. You need an infusion here at end. It looks vastly different than it did 2 years ago looking forward at the room. And you can't find it in the portal. You got to grow these guys. You got to recruit them. You got to build them up. Because in the portal, you need to be prepared to pay a ton of money if you want an edge, and they're the hardest to find. So that means if you're going to take flyers and you're going to bring in extra numbers, you're going to spend extra scholarships, go get a couple of prospects at edge because you can't fix it in the portal. So you need to have them and you need to take your swings here. And they're not doing it. And I don't get it. Anyway, at cornerback, the Buckeyes haven't given up on the Danny Odom situation. Danny Odom, Nebraska commit, who committed to Nebraska over Ohio State because Nebraska made him a ridiculous offer, much more than his market value reflected, because they needed a corner and they did what they had to do. But he's coming to visit. Contact hasn't stopped with him. We'll see what happens. Jay Timmons, that's the Florida State legacy. Mike Norvell's getting fired. The AD came out and didn't support him really, kind of just said, we'll address this at the end of the year. Mike Norvell is now, 3-4 after beating Alabama game 1 and everybody praising him and thinking that this was all, turned around after that 2-win season last year. The dude is just, they call Kiffin the Portal King. This guy's the Portal King, and he is the poster child for why this doesn't work. This kind of roster churn doesn't work. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your program. They're in there for a paycheck when you get too many of them in there all at once. So obviously, Jay Timmons most likely doesn't end up at Florida State. Boy, actually just got me thinking. Corbin Fordham just flipped to Florida State, man. How do these guys that just flipped to Florida State feel about right now? Probably not so hot. But Jay Timmons is probably going to end up flipping out of that commitment. Ohio State been pursuing him. So is Michigan. Does this open his, open it all the way back up again? He's a really highly rated kid, top 10 corner. So now that we're later on in the system, later on in the process, these guys become even higher demand, even higher, they command higher money. Like if I was advising, if I was an agent for one of these guys, buddy, you are waiting to commit until way out. Like the longer you wait, the more you're getting paid. The demand goes up, the money goes up. And this kid's going to be probably getting out of that class at the right time. So Ohio State going to need to come correct as far as the money, which, look, there are some people who are trying to push this narrative that Ohio State has eased up on the finances, even trying to use 3-star commits Landry Breed and Kamari Bing as evidence of that. They're the 2 lowest rated players in the class. Like both players, but just because Alabama was after Kamari Bing does not mean they were after him with huge dollars. They weren't. Neither was Ohio State. Landry Breed, just because NC State was paying him a good portion of revenue share, doesn't mean Ohio State is going to match that. That's what took so long. They're not. And there is no guaranteed NIL deals being offered to these players. They're getting a piece of revenue share. Ohio State has not opened up. They're not loosening up what they're spending. That's not happening. All right. So I wish this were live and we were chopping it up here. We should just do this live next time. So to review, Brilen Womack made a really bad decision and he's coming to grips with that. Adam Guthrie made a decision. He's not come to grips with who he committed to. UCLA commit Champ Smith. Buckeyes will still be working on him, as well as Kevin Brown from Penn State for the offensive line. Billy Napier out at Florida. Don't see Ohio State going after any of their prospects. Tight end Mack Sutter is a pipe dream. If anybody can pull it off, it's Keenan. He's a pesterer. Still got the full court press, but it seems like Sutter has doubled down, making a ton of money from Bama. I would like to see Ohio State offer Nick Latour out of Lebanon, the Louisville commit. Preston Frizel, the Notre Dame commit, I don't think is a realistic option. I think there's a decent chance there is no tight end in this class. At cornerback, it's kind of desperate, man. The Buckeyes may end up pulling the trigger and overpaying here to flip Danny Odom out of Nebraska or Jay Timmons off of Florida State. Because when we look at the cornerback room, if Jermaine Matthews leaves, which is very likely, you've got Devin Sanchez, Aaron Scott, Bryce West at nickel, most likely. I mean, he can play corner, but he appears to have made the move to nickel. He's a little smaller. After them, you've got Project Jordan Woods, and you've got incoming Jordan Thomas. That's not good, man. That's not good at all. So there's a decent chance they go ahead and spend what it takes to get one of those two. I think they should. Anyway, Jay Timmons, the Florida State thing is not going to work out because Mike Norvell going to get fired at the end of the year. At linebacker, James Laurinaitis offers Braxton Rembert out of Georgia, Caleb Downs High School, a Wake Forest commit. Pretty good shot the Buckeyes land this guy, but I got to say, if you're a kid that's committed to Wake Forest and that's your only Power 5 offer, and you get an offer from the Ohio State Buckeyes, and you don't flip, regardless of Wake Forest is offering you, I didn't want you from the beginning because you don't believe in yourself at all and you don't got good priorities. At running back, we didn't talk about this today. I still believe Amari Latimer, kid out of Georgia, committed to Wisconsin, ends up in this Buckeyes class, even though the Wisconsin AD just came out and said he's now going to give Luke Fickell some money to work with, and it appears Fickell will be back next year. I'm happy for Luke. I'm really disappointed that these idiots hired him and didn't fund the program. And this is what we were wondering, right? Was it Luke just not understanding how to put together a roster, or did he have no money? It appears he had no money to work with. Why did you hire him then? Why even bother going and make a good, expensive hire if you're not going to fund it? Wisconsin thought they could outsmart everybody. And if there's one thing I hate, it's somebody who thinks that they're just smarter than everybody else in the room. At defensive end, essentially it's DRE QUINN or bust. DRE QUINN. What do we know here? Tennessee, Texas. He's coming up to visit. He likes Ohio State, but he's another guy that's going to cost a lot of money. That's where we're at. The class remains at the 9th rated class in the country, 22 commits, 9th rated by both 247 and Rivals. The 3rd rated class in the Big Ten, which is infuriating. It's also behind Notre Dame. That's number 4 in the Big Ten footprint, but you can't really say that anymore, I guess, because USC and Oregon are not in the Big Ten footprint. You get what I mean. USC, Georgia, Alabama are 1, 2, 3, and we are now seeing Georgia and Alabama both be able to maintain their standing in college football recruiting, while Ohio State is not. Georgia runs their money similar to Ohio State, but what they did was something that Ohio State really can't do right now and compete. Take it back to 2023. The class of 2023, Georgia had 5 kids from Georgia in their class. In 2024, 10 kids from Georgia in their class. In 2025, when this money started to become a real thing, that number went to 20 kids from Georgia in their class. So they realized, okay, this is going to be harder to pull. We're going to have to pay. Let's shrink it, pull from inside the state. And with those 20 kids, they were able to supplement a few here and there to still remain in the top 3. And then this year, 2026, they've got 16 kids from Georgia. So following the same blueprint there. How's Alabama doing it? 7 kids from Georgia, 5 from Alabama. That's 12, 2 from Florida. So pulling from right there. And then they're all over the place. A kid from California, Illinois, Maryland, Nebraska, Ohio, Utah, Tennessee, Mississippi. But Alabama chose to spend a lot in one particular period on some high-end talent. Top 100 players, Xavier Griffin, Sidarian Morgan, Jairi Edwards, Xavier Crowell, Mack Sutter, Nolan Wilson, all of those guys within like a week and a half span committed to Alabama. And it was really clear. They just went, all right, let's spend right now. Boom. They've got 5 5-stars in the class that leads the country. So we keep gathering this data, living and learning, collecting information. It's obviously disappointing that Ohio State is not keeping pace with Georgia and Bama and now USC and Notre Dame. Also disappointing that the most recent ads, the late ads, seem to all be, lower rated guys. But when we just look at the class by itself and don't look at it against anybody else's class, just look at it by itself and the players that are in the class, the high-end talent, big-time players with Chris Henry Jr., Kari Wilder, Sam Greer, those 3, very likely high potential NFL first-round types. Blaine Bradford, big-time talent, Caden Dixon-Wyatt, Jordan Thomas, Sincere Johnson, Max Riley. These are dudes on top of dudes on top of dudes, and that's a great thing. Then it's just a matter of what you think, how you think they did on the evaluations of that bottom 10 that I always talk about, that, the hit rate, 20%, 30%. If you can get 50 or 60% of contributors out of that bottom 10 and you hit on most of your top high-end guys, you got yourself a class that might have been 9th ranked, but ended up performing on the field 2nd or 3rd ranked. So we'll see. Evaluations have never been more important. Ryan Day talked about that the other day. He's obviously right. And I love this stuff, man. I love this stuff. I think the bottom of this class better than the 2025 bottom, the bottom 10. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. Jug 'em Bucks.